Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight on Voice of Olympus, I am proud to bring you Living Theurgy, a podcast for THEURGIA. And I have our panelists with me tonight, Jean-Louis de Biasi of the Aurum Solis, and Tony Mierzwicki, a scholar of ancient magics. And today, first we're going to catch up with everybody. Tony, what's new and exciting with you?
I think I told you guys before that I'm working with an LA-based coven that have a strong Hecate focus.
Yes.
And I'm helping them put together or change around their rituals. They want to be working with the Attic calendar, which is a lunisolar calendar. And they have 4 public rituals a year. So there's the 2 solstices, and there's Beltane and Samhain. They wanted to have substitute rituals for that. Plus, they wanted to, have some extra stuff in there as well. So I'm in the process of putting all that together. It's all based on my text, Hellenismos. All of them have a copy of it, and they've been using that as a reference text. I shouldn't be saying this, but I have contacted Llewellyn about whether or not they'd be interested in it, but I haven't heard anything back. So probably not a good sign. But I don't know how quickly Llewellyn normally responds.
Thank you very much. That sounds exciting. Jean-Louis, what is new and exciting with you?
Few and several things. The first I published yesterday was an update of the pronounce of the Aurum Solis, which is the first step on the theurgic path. Usually we are updating the documents, the rituals, and everything once a year. So this is for 2024. So we used this year a lot of material we worked on for a long time coming from the magical papyri. And I am happy to see that Hecate is at the center because we have a specific ritual for it. Hecate ritual for Mithra that the students in the pronaos can use in their work, and this is a preliminary work that is intended to prepare the initiation in the first degree. So this is the process that take 8 months, something like that. So you have an inner work, meditation, guided meditation, relaxation, and so on, visualization, and then progress to the rituals themselves, material rituals you are performing in your temple. So it has been released in French 2 days ago. It will be released next week, sometime next week in English, and followed by Portuguese a few weeks after. And then we are working with yogi grandmaster. Really, we invented a lot of asanas, vinyasa flows, and so on. And he was, and he still is, an initiate in several initiatory orders from the West, and in the same time, a grandmaster of yoga in the East. Very well known, living in Argentina. So we are working very closely with him for everything related to practices that we can find in yoga too. I'm talking about breathing techniques, meditation, visualization, energy work, all these kind of things, movements. So all these kind of things, that are used during rituals. And we are implementing specific trainings on each part, like energy work, healing techniques, breathing techniques, and so on. And the connection with this yogi grandmaster is really amazing because he is very well known, in charge of the largest international yoga organization. So there are a lot of things going on that is really building a bridge between our path, Western path, and Eastern through these specific techniques. It's really good. So we will have several books published linked to this connection is storybooks, sutra, and you will learn more. Every time we will publish first in English, and then in other languages. Yes.
That is amazing. I'm sure both Tony and myself were thinking the same thing. I want to interview Jean-Louis about these in further detail, and I'd gladly review each and every one of these books as they come out.
What I can add, just something about Hecate. We will have a very ancient medal used in some rituals of Hecate available in a month. So we will share the information with everyone, because we know that a lot of people are interested with this path. So this medal will be available. I will show you what it is. But it was used for divination. And so we are usually designing exactly the same artifact, same size, same material, engravings, and so on. And it will be available, obviously, for everyone.
Oh, that is fantastic. I know many children of Hecate, and they would be very interested in the work that you're doing. So I will gladly point them your way, because that is amazing, Jean-Louis.
So this is few things we are working on.
We don't have a lot of time tonight, and you're both very busy, so we'll get to the topic. Theurgia is divine workings. Theosophia is divine insights or divine wisdom, and thaumaturgia in Greek means wonder working or miracle working. Here in the West, though, in the non-Greek country of United States, I've heard thaumaturgia referred to as kind of like lesser magic, like folklore magic or something like that. And that's very antithetical to the definition, which implies wonders and miracles, which are on a divine level. So I wanted to ask, what is your understanding of thaumaturgia, and what do you see as its relation with the work that everyone's doing on theurgy? And Jean-Louis, because you need to exit first, I pass the scepter to you and await your insights.
Thank you. When I am talking about theurgy in the Orum Solis or workshops and so on, I'm always saying that there are two kinds of lines, a vertical one, a horizontal one. The vertical is the ascent to the divine through everything we know, rituals, invocations, contact with the gods and goddesses, and so on. And this ascent is obviously using rituals to achieve that, but also a philosophical process, a moral process. Without this moral inner purification, you cannot ascend. The second horizontal is what I call magic, or how you pronounce that? Thaumaturgy or something like that?
Thaumaturgia, yeah, thaumaturgy.
Yeah, not in Greek. I am not Greek. In English.
Yeah, thaumaturgy.
Yeah. So yes, horizontal, meaning I can use all inner abilities I have, all psychic powers and so on, without even trying to ascend to anything. This is just an ability I have, I can cultivate, I can develop, and I can use that for a specific purpose. I want to contact someone or heal someone or help someone on the invisible level, I can do it because I trained several aspects of my being, an invisible being. So I can disconnect both things. First, the ascent, second, the horizontal. However, we can do both, because when we ascend, these inner psychic abilities increase and develop through rituals, through meditations, and so on. So I can say that thaumaturgists, magicians can work without any ascent, without theurgy, but a theurgist always use inner psychic abilities because they increase a lot when you practice like that. But in this case, you have really a connection between this goal of ascent and doing wonders, doing magical things. But this is not the goal itself. This is more consequence. You have tools that are more easy to use when you practice theurgy. And when you practice magic, you can use almost the same tools, but without this need to ascend, in fact. So I see the theurgic path maybe more holistic, maybe more full, the whole path, because you have everything in the same time. And if you are a magician, you can have very wonderful things and achievements, but without the need to ascend. So this is the way I see that in few words.
These are like the CDs, the different miraculous powers.
Sure,
Okay.
exactly. Yes, yes.
Hey, thank you. That was a thoughtful and thought-provoking answer. Thank you so very much. Tony, what are your thoughts on thaumaturgia and theurgia?
Okay, well, as we know, the term theurgy comes from the Greek word theurgia, which is theu or God and ergon or work. So it literally means God working. So similarly, thaumaturgy comes from the Greek word thauma, which means miracle or marvel, and ergon, which means work. So it's sometimes translated as miracle working or wonder working. So the term was first used in the first half of the 4th century BCE in the writings of Demosthenes, who was a Greek statesman and orator, Isocrates, who was among the most famous rhetoricians of his time, and Plato, who was an ancient Greek philosopher and foundational thinker in Western philosophy. They began using compound words denoting artificial man-made marvel working. So these words were thaumaturgia, which is marvel making, and thaumaturgia, which is wonder working. And if I got the pronunciation slightly wrong, I apologize. So it's this second word that gives us the term thaumaturgy. So there are certainly divine and natural marvels which appear spontaneously in the world around us. However, the term thaumata, which is referred to here, has the connotation of being man-made and artificial and have been worked by human hands, those of a marvel maker, a person having the power of divine craftsmanship or creative powers approaching those of the gods. The word thaumaturgia appears much more frequently than thaumaturgia. So one who practices thaumaturgia is a thaumatopaios, and he specializes in performance in front of a captive audience. And that can include mime actors, dancers, musicians, conjurers, and puppeteers who have the ability to perform spectacles of various types. Sophists in particular put on amazing performances, and they were also paid exorbitant amounts of money. In Xenophon's Symposium, Socrates explained his position on thaumaturgia, that man-made marvels such as acrobatic feats were not worthy of any astonishment, whereas natural marvels could spur educated men onto further inquiry and contemplation. When we look at the writings of Professor Georg Luck, who was a Swiss classicist known for his studies of magical beliefs and practices in the classical world, he believed that wrestlers, acrobats, charioteers, theatrical entertainers, and others needed professional magical help. So the crowds would attend expecting certain types of miracles to happen. He believed that some itinerant magicians may have performed what he called gypsy tricks based on hypnosis and mass suggestion. You know, of course, for an academic, any sort of magic has to be thought of as being impossible. One thing that dawned on me when you go off on a tangent here, it seems that some performers would commission magicians to produce curse tablets to hamstring their competitors so they wouldn't do particularly well, whereas others would commission magicians or thaumaturgists to make their performances truly wondrous. So there's a difference of opinion as to whether the performers will be doing their own magic or would bring in a magician or a thaumaturgist. I know that in the case of curse tablets, people would normally commission a magician to do the work for you. So in the last few decades, academics have studied thaumaturgists, referring to them as miracle workers, holy men, and pseudo-prophets of the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era. Probably the best known one was Apollonius of Tyana, who is often represented as a pagan imitator of Jesus, but he actually had a cult based around him. His miraculous feats were very similar to those performed by Jesus in the Gospels. Apollonius had a tendency to suggest to people that they were possessed and needed to be exorcised by him. Other examples of holy men include Simon Magus, who's known to us from the New Testament, and Alexander of Abonoteichos, known as the pseudo-prophet. In the 3rd century of the Common Era, there was a Christian saint called Gregory Thaumaturgos, or Gregory the Miracle Worker, and he was well known for performing miracles. In traditions such as Christianity and Islam, thaumaturgy is seen as divine powers manifesting through a holy person. So moving forward to the 16th century, we get to John Dee, who lived from 1527 to either 1608 or 1609, who was a famous occultist and astronomical advisor to Queen Elizabeth, who channeled Enochian magic with the assistance of Edward Kelly. So in the 16th century, the word thaumaturgy entered the English language, meaning miraculous or magical powers. In John Dee's book, the mathematical preface to elements of geometry, of Euclid, of Megara. And he mentions an art mathematical called thaumaturgy, which giveth certain order to make strange works of the sense to be perceived, and of men greatly to be wondered at. So Dee saw thaumaturgy as wonder working, and he referred to Albertus Magnus's brazen head, which was a bronze serpent which hissed, and a number of other points common in the literature of the day. Dee agreed with the fundamental concept of magic being a branch of mathematics. In Dee's time, the mathematics referred to physical mechanical devices which employed mathematical principles in their design. These devices, operated by means of compressed air, springs, strings, pulleys, or levers, were sometimes seen as magical devices which could only have been made with the aid of demons and devils. So again, here we have a rational explanation for magic, because academics don't like to believe that magic works. So Dee wasn't the only one to include thaumaturgy as one of the arts mathematical. The connection of magic and mathematics had long been established by Roger Bacon and Cornelius Agrippa. And then after that, it was continued by Caspar Enns, Jean Lechon, Gabriel Naud, John Wilkins, and many more besides. John Milton, who lived from 1608 to 1674, was familiar with Dee, and he made a couple of very specific references to him. In Paradise Lost, Milton extensively refers to thaumaturgy or wonder working. The most famous examples are the metamorphoses of Satan. So Satan changes shape firstly to a dragon, later a cherub, a cormorant, a lion, a tiger, and then a toad. Milton states that thaumaturgy has a rightful place in the universe and is an art practiced not only by demons, but by the forces of good as well. Raphael is an example of a good angel with the power to change his own shape. In one passage, Raphael takes on the form of a phoenix and flies through the heavens to earth. So wrapping up, so looking at the difference between theurgy and thaumaturgy, the primary difference seems to be that theurgy is focused on the mystical experience of union with the divine, while thaumaturgy is focused more on producing supernatural effects in the material world, which of course can include a saint performing miracles. Iamblichus wrote about something akin to wonder working or thaumaturgy, but he used the word gauteia, or sorcery. But that term is now associated with the Ars Goetia, which is otherwise known as the Lesser Key of Solomon. So these are specifically demonic workings. So it's best to stick with the term thaumaturgy. So that's just putting together like a few sources.
Wow, I bow to your scholarship. It was phenomenally impressive. Yes, I agree with Jean-Louis.
Excellent.
It was delivered very quickly, too. I'm amazed that you could rattle all that off. So you impressed me, Tony. It sounds like thaumaturgia and thaumatopiesis were kind of like the distinction between magic, the art, the spiritual art, and magic as in doing magic tricks. It seems like the ancients had the same type of confusion about those things. I do know, because of my research, is that in Alexandria during the the Hellenistic times, they had things like animatronics. They had moving statues and things like that that were mechanical. And some of the blueprints of these things have survived, and they've filled many episodes of the Ancient Alien episodes and on television. And there's the anti-Cythera device, which was as sophisticated as a Swiss watch and yet existed during, Hellenistic times. So I no doubt there were ways of producing wondrous performances. Apollonius, I know a lot about Apollonius because the person who wrote the book, Philostratos, was a Lemnian Greek, and I'm a Lemnian Greek, so we remember these things. He also wrote a tourist guide to Troy, which was well known in the Roman Empire. And just like here in Harrisburg, they see ghosts of soldiers. In Philostratos's guide, he would tell you what ghosts of which Trojan and Greek heroes you would encounter if you went to Troy, and they had souvenirs and restaurants and statues and the whole thing over there for tourists. So thank you very much. Wow. My mind is blown. Jean-Louis, it's 1:30. Do you need to leave yet, or?
Oh, I have 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
Cool.
Now-
do you have, Tony, do you have the text? Can you share it with us to read it again?
I can. I referred to about 4 different texts. So some of the
I'm
stuff.
talking about what you read. Just.
Yeah, I put together 4 different texts. There are things that I found online. I can basically give you links to the whole lot if you want to put it together. But I just wanted to get a nice overview of what thaumaturgy was. And actually, what Hercules said at the very beginning was very true. I was listening to a podcast that a friend of mine put on. She interviewed someone about this very topic, the difference between theurgy and thaumaturgy. And the guy was basically agreed with us on theurgy, but with thaumaturgy, he thought of it as lesser magic, like one step up from parlor tricks. And that obviously can't be true, because for the ancients, it was wonder working or miracle working. And there were even Christian saints who were responsible for practicing it. So it's not just, sleight of hand type stuff. We're talking about things that are like bona fide miracles.
Yes, and it takes time and work to master all these abilities. If you want to work with healing powers, if you want to do astrologic rituals and so on, it takes a long time to work on it, to train, to master that. So we cannot really say that this is a lesser level of, no, it makes, this is complicated anyway.
Yeah.
This is not like someone reading a spell or doing a sacrifice or something like that takes a few minutes without any preparation. This is more complicated than that.
I was kind of blown away by the way that it was used in the entertainment industry. So
Yes.
much as we have entertainers now who put on absolutely incredible stage shows with, lasers going off and all sorts of things happening. The ancients enjoyed that kind of stuff as well, but for them it was magic. But as Hercules pointed out, they had very sophisticated machines in Alexandria, running on things like steam and the like.
Sure,
And
exactly.
so I know that some of the things would have been at least mechanical, but I always like to believe that there were legitimate magical components there as well, which is something academics won't acknowledge.
Yeah, and you have a few examples like Houdini, for example, who was mixing what we can call prestidigitation and magic, and we don't know where is the limit between both of it. Sometimes this is physical, a trick. Sometimes this is more than that.
Yeah.
So is he a magician? Yes, in a sense, yes. And this is a good example, I guess, of someone who has a foot on each side and playing with that.
And the line gets fuzzier still when you look at shamanic societies. Even with the Blavatsky, who started the Theosophical Society, She was accused of using prestidigitation and other fake magical techniques with her, theosophical miracles. And shaman who were studied, it seems like a combination of psychic powers and magic tricks, like when they do the psychic surgery. So sometimes that line is fuzzy, and it makes sense that these arts are sacred to Hermes, who can also be very tricky and deceptive in his interactions with people.
Exactly, yes. And
can I share a thought with you guys?
sure.
About 20 years ago, I met someone who believed that David Copperfield was a high-level initiate. This is just something I filed away. I don't really know what to make of it, because a lot of his tricks couldn't be explained. And also, he would have a section of the house that was locked off. Only he had access to it. His wife wasn't allowed in there. Nobody was allowed in there. So the inference was that there may well have been something supernatural happening. So if that was the case, then there's certainly a case for magicians and the like in ancient times combining magic with the particular skills which they were demonstrating to the public. Just a thought. Have you guys heard anything about David Copperfield in that respect?
I
No.
don't doubt it, and I haven't heard about Copperfield, but I've heard other magicians being accused of practicing sorcery or magic in addition to the magic tricks, because again, as you pointed out, the tricks seemed undoable. Like, how do you make an elephant disappear, or how do you make a building, disappear? And yet they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was actually a series of videos on YouTube where there was a guy called the Masked Magician. And so if you have like a couple of hours to spare, just seek out some of these videos, and he would actually show how a number of those tricks were performed. Kind of takes a lot of the mystery out of it, but yeah, there's still a lot that he doesn't show you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not supposed to reveal these kind
Yes.
of things usually. But this is interesting, yes.
Well, I don't know if they make any vows.
In some cases, I read yes. For some tricks, in this case, yes, they have they inherited or communicated few things, and more advanced shows cannot be revealed. Because when you buy or you receive this kind of inheritance, it goes with the fact I have not revealed that to anyone beside my heir after.
Yeah.
It was the case for Houdini, maybe for him too, few people like that. And there is a magazine from Masons in California, and 2 months ago, it was about Masons, magicians, who were magicians. And it was, all about that, the secret and the magician and the magic part and the prestidigitation part, something like that. So it was interesting to see this, and several were Masons, Houdini included.
When I was in my 20s, I guess, there was a book that I had. I don't know what happened to it. Somebody borrowed it and I never got it back, and I've never seen it. It was a book that showed how Jesus performed his miracles as magic tricks. And it showed you the material he had on hand, how he did certain things like walk on water and turn wine into water, that these were all doable as magic tricks, and they weren't even very sophisticated magic tricks. So again, who knows? I always tell people I wasn't there. I can't tell you.
But it was, these kind of things were common at the time.
Yes.
After that, less in the medieval time or modern time, but in the past, it was very common all over the Mediterranean world.
Mm.
So I will have to go. I let you continue the conversation.
Okay, how can people find you, communicate with you, tap into all the wonderful things you're doing, and What
The best is to go on Facebook and to send me a message, or on my website, debiasi.org. And then you can follow what I'm doing. The newsletter is a very good way, because I'm trying to use every week, usually on Friday or Saturday, I send a newsletter to all the students, everyone who registered to the newsletter, and you have a quote from Epicurean philosophers, classical philosophers, mainly Stoicism, Epicureanism, Platonism. And this is a quote, and there is a commentary with the quote. And then several things linked to be successful in your inner life. So every week you receive that. So I encourage everyone to register and to have this newsletter every week.
I will request one by email and on Facebook.
Okay, and I will share with you a link like that because I will do a screenshot of this newsletter. It will be a good way to understand what I am talking about. And if you can share it on Facebook or elsewhere, it will be very helpful.
Consider it shared. As soon as I receive it, it will be shared.
Thank you.
Very much, Jean-Louis. Have a wonderful evening. And go ahead, Tony.
So
Yes,
Jean-Louis, before you go, what was the Hecate thing that you were talking about? Could you give us a little bit more information about that?
About what you said?
Something to do with Hecate you were talking about at the very beginning.
Yes, so I will do a short commentary, and like that I will share it with you.
Because I'd be very interested in that, and I think the coven that I'm working with in LA would be very interested in it as well, because they're all incredibly devoted to Hecate.
Yes, we will have a book published this summer about Hecate, and this is based on research in the order or on Solis for the past 3 or 4 years, plus in the same time with the book, the medal I was talking about for divination and invocation.
Actually, I remember you talking about this a few months ago, and at the time I expressed an interest in the book and interviewing you about it, and now I'm just as interested, if not more so.
Sure, I am building a kind of interest. Yes, no problem. I will share it as soon as possible.
Please, thank you.
You're welcome. So have a good day and a good solstice again.
To you as well. Thank you, Jean-Louis.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was awesome from both of you. I think we covered the topic quite extensively. Do you want to give us an orientation to what you're doing? You've been doing the work with Hecate Coven. I haven't received any news from you about your video show, about your writing in the blog. Are you still doing those things, or?
Yeah, I'm still doing book reviews. Still doing interviews. I just did a book review of Solomonic workings, basically the Greater Key of Solomon by Sarah Mastros. So she's actually overseas at the moment, so I'm not going to be able to interview her until August. But the review is up, and I'm currently reviewing a text that's largely a series of poetic invocations to Set Typhon by a lady called Harper Feist. She is an incredibly well-known Thelemite. She has a Thelemic podcast, and she interviews a whole lot of people. And she has this book out, and it feels like it's going to become a collector's item. It's beautifully made. There are 8 sigils in it, and there are 8 hymns to Typhon Set, and she relates Typhon Set to change. And if you think about the world that we live in at the moment, the one thing that characterizes it is incredible change. You've got technological change, you've got society changing, the way we see ourselves, gender and everything is in a state of flux and change. So rather than be a victim to change, she seems to be pushing the idea of that by working with Set Typhon, or she calls him Typhon Set, I've always called him Set Typhon, but anyway, it's just splitting hairs there. You can actually, it's like riding a wave rather than being swept along, you know, being on the wave, being in control rather than just being swept along by changes that are beyond your control.
I'm
You know,
curious about that because Typhon, in my interactive storytelling that I do, Typhon has been like the central character for the past 2 years. So I've had a
wow.
chance to really contemplate on Typhon and involve Typhon in the interactive stories. There's a very interesting paragraph in The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky about Typhon. So if you can send me a link to this book when it becomes available, that's something I would be interested in pursuing just for my own curiosity and knowledge.
It is already available. It's a limited edition. So it's basically there's an introduction where she talks about Set, she talks about Typhon, then she talks about Typhon Set, and then you have the 8 invocations. So you've basically got someone who has decades of occult experience behind them, putting their energies into working with Typhon Set. So it's quite a powerful text. It's probably not for everyone, but because both Typhon and Set get a bad rap
Yes,
amongst people. Yeah.
so does
So
Kronos. Kronos is considered a very negative villain when he really isn't. If you work with Kronos, he confers very, very many benefits and keen insights, especially in the latter portions of life.
I totally agree with you. I mean, for me, Kronos is in the sphere of Saturn, and while he does represent death and restriction, they're properties that we want to get rid of within ourselves. But he's also a gateway to higher realms, the realm of
Yes.
the stars, the Ogdoad, and also to the Primamobile beyond. So I see him as a gateway deity. So I don't see him as negative at all. Actually, I don't see any of the gods as negative. The only negativity and evil that I see is in humanity around us. I don't see it in the gods that I work with at all.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same thing. All the divine powers that I've encountered or worked with, they were very helpful and taught in a unique way that once you got their methods, what you're learning became a lot easier to understand, to put into perspective, and to utilize. But
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. I don't live in a black and white or polarized universe. I'm living in one in the physical world at this particular point in time in history, as are all of us. But my spiritual world isn't like that at all.
Yeah, we tend to agree on a lot of issues, and one of the most important ones is that we're both dedicated to bringing back the worship of the old gods, and neither of us mind how people go about it. I
Right.
would prefer it if people went about in a traditional sort of way, but I would rather have them working with the gods in non-traditional ways rather than not working with them at all.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. And again, the gods are on in movies, the gods are in television shows, the gods are in comic books, the gods are they're everywhere. They're on our court buildings, they're on our government buildings, they're in our town squares. So um uh, and people understand them in that context, or they're so ever present that they're invisible to most people. But they're very much shapers and guides of Western civilization, and they never went anywhere.
No, no. I think to a large extent they've taken a back seat for hundreds of years while Christianity became more and more popular, but they're now making a comeback. There are more and more people working with the old gods, and they, like you said, they never really went away. They're always there, and they're always very keen to come to us, so long as we're coming from the heart, we're calling upon them for the right sort of reasons.
I agree with you. And please let me know what you're doing. If you need it shared, I'll gladly share it. I've always been happy to share your creative works and your teachings.
Sure, thank you. I will take advantage of your generous offer, and when I get the next review out, which will hopefully be in a few days, I will let you know, and you can get it out to your people.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we have some time. If there's anything you'd like to share, we can focus on that, or I can jumpstart my next piece of inquiry with you, whatever you'd like to do.
Um, let's just jumpstart whatever you want to talk about. I'm just curious what you want to talk about. We'll take it from there.
Okay, I'm developing some new shows, and some of them were done before for greater or shorter periods. And we talked about the thaumaturgy today. We've done a couple of specials with thaumaturgy over the years, but I'd like to do a show just on thaumaturgy and touch upon all those things we talked about today, like even the things that are on ancient aliens, just to put them in the proper perspective. Because in Alexandria, they did have coin vending machines where you could put and get a cold or hot beverage. Archimedes had mirror things that he used to burn down enemy ships.
Yeah.
They invented a form of machine gun crossbow in Roman times. So they had a lot of things that we normally don't associate with Greco-Roman history or Egyptian history, but they're very much associated with the myths, where they had all these divine things going on and divine energies. So because I cover UFOs and ancient astronauts, I was thinking of doing like first a special and then focusing on thaumaturgy and things like that, just to get a different perspective than the ancient alien one. Because just because they had advanced technology doesn't mean that they came from outer space. And the gods do have outer space connections. The planets are named after them. The zodiacs, the ones that they knew about, are stories from Greek mythologies, which included the gods. So there is that connection between the heavens and Earth through the planets and the stars. But I'd like to focus on that a little bit more. And there'll be a special. There'll be I'm contacting people who were on the show last time I did this to see if they'd like to come on again. So I was thinking of inviting you guys as well to get your impressions. Would you be interested in being a guest on that show?
I'll think about it. I'm not an expert on ancient aliens, but there are a couple of things I'd like to kind of discuss with you while we're broaching the subject. I mean, one thing that everyone's familiar with is that with the technology that we have now, we can't duplicate the largest structures that the ancients built. So using the cranes that we have now, it's not possible to build the Great Pyramid again. So we know about the huge structures, but another thing that I learned a few years ago was I went to the Tutankhamun exhibition and I met a guy there, got into a chat with him, and he said that he last saw the Tutankhamun exhibition in the 70s. And he was with a jeweler friend of his, and she was looking at the jewelry that the ancient Egyptians had. And she was saying that using the technology that was available in the 70s, she could not duplicate some of the pieces the Egyptians had. So we're talking about them having access to technology that was superior to ours
Right.
for jewelry and for making huge monuments. So I'm not sure if that necessarily implies that we need to have aliens from out there coming in to help us, or whether it's just technology that's been lost over time. I mean, I'm interested, but I don't really have any sort of facts that I can share. I imagine your guests to be far more educated on the matters at hand.
But you're educated on magical matters and magical lore. And today, what came out from both you and Jean-Louis is that there is magical lore about these things, and the perspective is different from the ancient alien people or from the ancient technology people or the magicians. but the actual lore exists, and it's been looked at and it's been interpreted in different ways. And again, I don't know if if ancient aliens were involved with just an advanced civilization. And there seems to be a lot of evidence globally that there was an advanced civilization. There are calendars of the planet Venus, for instance, in several points in the globe, including South America. So there are similarities in the myths. Like, for instance, the Mojica Indians in South America, they have drawings of someone fighting a hydra wearing a leopard skin or a
Wow.
panther skin, like Hercules wears the lion skin on his head. And they have the same figure holding two snakes, one in each hand. So if you're familiar with the Greek mythology, it becomes very apparent who that figure is. But what business do they have with that figure? Also, there are in Egyptian tombs and buildings carvings of corn, but not what they called corn back then, the American corn, which isn't found in the old world, or wasn't until we reintroduced it there. So there's a lot of things like that that indicate that I heard also that the Apache word for the sun god was Ra. So
Interesting.
I don't know if I'm remembering the right tribe. I'm pretty sure it was the Apache, but there are a lot of things going on like that that I think deserve to be talked about and deserve to be looked at from as many different angles as possible. And we might not figure out what it is, just like the parable of the blind man and the elephant. One person's touching the ear and says that this is like a sail of a boat. Another person's touching the tail and says, oh, it feels like a brush of some sort. And somebody else is touching the trunk and says it feels like a rope. And so they're each touching the same thing. Somebody's touching the leg and says it's like the bark of a tree. So they're all touching the same animal, but they're touching it at different points, and they're not seeing how these points connect into a bigger picture. So I thought it would be an interesting exercise to see if somehow each of us with our own perspective, backed by our education and whatever it is, maybe we'll draw a fresh conclusion, or maybe we'll draw a clearer way of looking at the picture. So again, it's still in the planning stages, but that's what I was contemplating.
Actually, I've got a story that I can share with you. North
Okay.
of Sydney, which is my birth town, there's a little town called Gosford. And on the outskirts of Gosford, there's a site which was accidentally found in the 1950s by a guy who was looking for his dog, which had gotten lost. It's basically two parallel walls made out of sandstone. And those walls have Egyptian carvings on them. So apparently some students of Egyptology went out, they looked at them, and they basically said, well, these are nonsense. They don't make any sense. So the conspiracy theory is that it's from a very early version of Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Mhm.
And there was one guy who looked at those hieroglyphics, produced a translation, and conveniently or sadly uh, died shortly after doing the translation. So he can't be interrogated. So the translation basically says that there was a party of Egyptians who came out, they landed, they had a prince with them, and the prince was bitten by a snake, which bit him 3 times. He died, they buried him there. So it's basically his funeral chamber. Um, so the more official explanation is that there was a tombstone carver from Australia who served in Egypt during World War One, saw a whole lot of Egyptian carvings, and basically came back and carved them. But the thing is that you've got these incredibly beautiful carvings, and they're not protected, so anyone can deface them if they choose to do so, and no one's ever profited from them because they're not Aboriginal. They won't be protected. Yeah, there's something else. I've also heard that you've got like differential erosion. One of the walls which is more open to the wind than the other, is more eroded than the other. And apparently with the Aboriginals, when they carve things into rock, the carvings stay there for about 100 years, but every 100 years they have to go over the carvings again, because otherwise your sandstone starts to wear away.
Mhm.
But so the tail end of that is that I don't know how true this is, but apparently when they have looked at the the substances which they use during the mummification process, there's eucalyptus resin there, and eucalyptus is native to Australia. It has been shipped to other places as well. So we have it in California. I've seen it in South Africa as well. But initially, it was uniquely Australian. So if it was a part of the mummification process, because that was so important, it makes sense to send a prince out to
Right.
collect it. So again, if you Google it, you Google Gosford and Egyptian hieroglyphs, you'll find it. I've actually been there. I've seen it. It's quite an amazing place. There's a huge carving of, I think it was Anubis, and unfortunately someone's put black stuff all over it. It's been 20 years since I was there, so that they could put a piece of paper of it on it and do a rubbing.
Yeah.
So they're just defacing stuff. No one's looking after it. It should
Someone
really be
defaced Stonehenge this week. This past week, so an environment
really.
we faced Stonehenge. They sprayed orange powder on it. It's been cleaned off, but they did it around the solstice celebration. They to protest some environmental things. But yeah, they defaced Stonehenge.
I mean, Stonehenge is priceless. It's something that belongs to all of humanity. It's something that should
Yes.
be cherished and protected. I don't believe people sometimes. You know, why do you need to destroy things?
I agree with you there, but you contradicted yourself because the things you've talked about tonight, you've talked eloquently off the top of your head. So you definitely have intelligent things to add to the show. So again, if you'd like to, you're more than invited. The door is always open. If you don't want to, I know you're very busy with all your projects. That's fine too. We remain friends and colleagues.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
And now we've reached the
We
end.
have just about run out of time, I think.
Yeah, we are. That's what I was going to ask you. How can people contact you? How can they find your writings? How can they find your podcasts, your YouTube shows, and all your other work? Anything new and exciting happening?
Okay, the easiest way to find me is on Facebook. I have both a personal page and an author page. The author page is a few months out of date. I'm going to have to transfer stuff onto that. I have a blog which I write for Patheos called Holistic Spirituality. And I also have a show that's started a few months ago called the Zeus and Hera Show. So
Mhm.
that that can be found on Facebook. So we've had some interesting guests over the few months while the show's been running. So that's pretty well it for me. I'm not as prolific as you and some of the other people on the panel.
But your books are awesome. They've always been awesome, and
Thank
they
you.
continue to be awesome. And you're a light shining in the darkness, and I appreciate you, Tony. Thank you so very
I
much.
don't know about that. Okay, but thank you. I appreciate your kind words.
And thanks to all our wonderful listeners. This will be up this weekend on YouTube. Thanks. Joyous journeys and amazing adventures, everyone.
Thanks for hosting, Hercules. Appreciate it.
And good night.